And there's been dozens of these, but I mean, specifically, I get these emails, I watch television, I see the globalist relishing when they talk about we have peer-reviewed journals, you don't, when it's a lie. We have almost all the real peer-reviewed journals. They just make up fantastical frauds, and they relish going over these. But in the time we have left, I specifically want to get into what's coming up at this conference that you're going to be reporting for us on graciously from Cancun, Mexico, and how we, the American people and others listening all over the world, how we ensure that this scheming group of people seeking to seize control of the global economy, how do we ensure that they are defeated?
Right. The first thing that your listeners should do, and you should do it immediately, I mean in the next 24 hours, is to get in touch with your congressmen and your senators and say to them that Fred Upton, who is a rhino, a Republican in name only, should not be appointed the chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee now the Republicans have taken control of it, because Fred Upton is a true believer in the whole global warming rubbish. He votes with the Democrats on this as on practically everything else. If he takes control of that committee, vast amounts of damage can be done, and indeed the world might yet find itself going under a climate tyranny, a world government. And that one appointment is, in my view, that what could make the difference between keeping the freedom, prosperity and democracy of the West and losing it. The candidates against Fred Upton are Joe Barton, the current ranking member of the committee on the Republican side. He's a very wonderful man from Texas. I know him well, love him dearly. He's a terrific piece of work, really magical man. And he, by rights, should get this. There's another one called Representative Shimkus, who's also a candidate. He would be very good. I think Joe Barton would probably be better, but Shimkus would be very nearly as good. Either of those would be perfectly acceptable as chairman of that committee. But Fred Upton, who is not reflecting the opinion of the Republican Party on this or many other issues, he would be a disaster, and he might work with the Democrats to see to it that somehow we got Congress to start legislating in this area where at the moment it has failed to do so. So get on to your senators and your congressmen and tell them it mustn't be upped. It mustn't be upped.
Also, the alternative media that's now beginning to displace the corporate prostitute media, we need to really report on what's coming up in the next 2 weeks.
That's absolutely right, because the next thing is there is already a treaty in draft. It no longer contains quite such explicit and open admissions that they're trying to set up a world government as previous treaty drafts did. Nevertheless, it's now going to follow the approach that the EU took, the European Union. They did a little treaty here, a little treaty there, each one not adding too much to the one that previously happened. But by the time you've done 40 years of this, all our freedoms in Britain have gone. 5/6 of our laws are now made in Europe by people we don't elect, and only 1/6 made in Britain by people we do. That's how fast you can lose your freedoms if you have this kind of salami-slicing approach to setting up treaties. So very important, therefore, that you keep an eye on this process, because what Obama is going to try to do, he knows he can't get any treaty coming out of Cancun ratified in the Senate, not after the Republican landslide. There's no way he can get it ratified by a three-quarters majority of the Senate. What they will therefore try to do is to enact the Cancun agreement, not as a treaty, but either as U.S. legislation, if they think they can get it through both houses. That would be difficult by a much smaller majority than the treaty would require, of course. Or he will use the EPA and the Democrat states like California to enact the legislation round the back. And that is what his plan is. And the people at Cancun know perfectly well that they can't therefore call the Cancun Accord anything like a treaty. If they call it a treaty, it has to go in front of the Senate where it will be defeated. So it won't be called a treaty.
Lord Monckton, we're almost out of time. I want to cover several other subjects. We know this move towards world government is not just coming out of the UN and the Club of Rome and these people that want to seize control of all energy production. We also know that the big central megabanks are involved in financing this, Goldman-Sachs, J.P. Morgan. And a few weeks ago, in a debate in the UK House of Lords, Tory life peer Lord James Blackheath and when we played the video here, said that a Foundation X apparently has offered to give the UK $5 billion right away. He said many other members of the House of Lords knew about it, but it had kept it secret. He has just learned of it, and basically they're globalists who are offering to basically buy out the UK government. What do you make of this on the heels, sir, of the BBC that I have here with the headline, Irish Republic Banks for Sale, and their finance minister saying he is in favor of foreign banks owning Ireland. I mean, is this not a takeover?
Yes, it is a takeover, and a very serious one, and there's no doubt that the big banks, as you say, the mega banks, are right up to their necks in all of this. After all, Al Gore was on the board of Lehman Brothers. One of the reasons why they went bust is that he had put them into all this global warming stuff, and they lost a fortune on it. And so my advice to those mega banks is this is a scare which is so far collapsing that if you put any more of your clients' money or your own into this, you will lose it as financial institutions, and you will also lose more than that. You will lose your credibility with politicians and electorates, and you will find yourselves no longer being allowed to be mega banks. You'll be broken up into smaller pieces, so you can't endure this kind of, you can't impose this kind of policy on innocent people anymore just because you want to profit from whipping up fears of global warming that have no basis in reality.
Lord Christopher Monckton, have you heard, as a British Lord, have you heard about this Foundation X?
I've heard stories of this kind, but I have no evidence either way, so I don't think I can say anything very detailed about it. There are several foundations that have that kind of money available. I have some idea of who they are. I know one or two of them are run by people who are true believers in the new religion of global warming, and that they might well make gestures of this kind. But of course, $5 billion, it may sound a lot of money to an individual, but to a government like that of Britain, it's very, very tiny. So I don't think that you can buy a whole government with as little as $5 billion.
Yes, sir. Okay, I've got just a few final questions, and then we're going to let you go. And you've been very nice to join us here today with the big tube strike going on in London that kept you from getting to your final destination. Continuing here from the Special Climate Change Program, executive summary, the blueprint of this meeting that starts here in just a few days that you're about to get on an airplane and travel to in the next few days in southern Mexico, there in the Yucatan Peninsula. They describe on page 6 a laundry list, an implementation of sustainable agriculture, livestock production system, the eradication of measures that encourage environmental degradation, that's any activity, and cause global greenhouse gas emissions. Yes, and greenhouse gas emissions, and it goes on. The implementation of relocation programs for human settlements and the infrastructure in high-risk areas, and the implementation of policies aimed at climate stability and sustainable development. I mean, is this not outrageous in how brazen it is?
Yes, it's what they're trying to do is they're still trying to ignore the fact that the science has collapsed. That's why I spent a little bit of time on this program explaining why we know the science has collapsed. I did a very interesting experiment. I took the greenhouse gases as they were in 1950, as they are now. I worked out how much warming there should have been if the IPCC, the UN's climate panel, was right. There should have been 1.5 Celsius. There's only been 0.6. Using the UN's formula leads to a huge exaggeration, 2.5 times over in the amount of warming to be expected. Take away that exaggeration, you take away the problem.
But sir, we're almost out of time. We're almost out of time. Yeah. We'll have more time next week. But does this not illustrate that it's nothing but a naked power grab? Forced rationing, relocation of populations? I mean, these people have really tipped their hand. I know you've seen all the recent admissions where they talk about climate tyranny, and they're in the London Guardian and everywhere else admitting that it's an authoritarianism and saying it's good. Why are they so arrogant?
Because the penny hasn't dropped that the people won't stand for this very much longer. People are fed up with this interference in their freedoms. They're fed up with these people trying to take the world over at Cancun and Copenhagen and all these other places. And very soon, the politicians who go along with this are going to be flung out of office forever. It's already begun in America. America was the first. The Republicans came off the Kool-Aid 18 months ago, decided they didn't believe in the science of global warming anymore. They began with increasing confidence to say so. As a result, they won huge increase in the general election. I know it was only one of the factors, but it was an important one nevertheless. And that is going to happen with increasing frequency around the democratic world. Now, if the democratic world doesn't play, the rest of the world won't be able to play either. And this entire scare and all the nasty world government policies that go with it will come to a sticky and not untimely end.
All right, Lord Monckton, will be speaking to you next week sometime from Cancun at this criminal meeting. In 60-second closing, what are you planning to do when you're there? And I've seen some of the videos from other meetings. When they see you, they literally run, which again signifies the tide is turning.
That's right. There's no doubt the people who should debate me won't do so. The Cambridge Union Society, one of the premier debating societies in the world, invited me to speak a few weeks ago on the climate. They had to cancel because as soon as the people on the other side were told I was going to be there, they said they didn't want to come. They know that what they're doing is a lie. They know that it is indefensible, so all they try is personal attacks on those of us who dare to say it's indefensible, and they are now in open, rampant, cowering, cowardly retreat. This is the end.
All right, scienceandpublicpolicy.org, invaluable, true research. You are unrivaled in your defense of humanity on this climate fraud front. Lord Monckton, we'll talk to you next week.
God bless you and God bless America.
All right, God bless you. I tell you, on the front lines of the info war, this is the key to their takeover program to fund this international banking takeover. And you just heard it from Lord Monckton. We have got to continue to rout these people. We've been winning the battles on so many fronts. It's time to kick it into high gear. We are routing this scum at your local city councils, at your school board meetings. You go in with all the evidence it's a fraud, and you expose it, and you say, stop teaching the children that Santa Claus is real, and that if we don't bend over to government raping, that we're all going to die. Stop it. Stop the fraud.